What up, Max? How are you?
Here's your flash. Thanks.
Every time. How is it every time? This gets me. I love it. I love it. Poor Warren. Denied. That hug was denied. Hi, my name is Michael, and life is cringe. Well, I mean the game. The game Life is Cringe. Although, you know, real life is pretty cringe. I mean, let's be honest. The real world, pretty darn cringe. The game Life is Strange was made a few years ago by Don't Nod Entertainment. I think Don't Nod is not Lob spelled backwards. A French production company. And it is a really remarkable game, whether you like it or not. It is amazing that it actually reached the popularity and success that it did. They thought that it was just going to be this minor little game that maybe a few people would play, but it wouldn't be that important. But actually, it became a really popular game. A lot of people ended up really, really liking it. It developed a fan base. There are tons of people that talk about it and do Let's Plays and really enjoy the game. And I wanted to talk about it a little bit. This can't really be called a review. This is more like I'm interrogating myself about how I feel about this game. The game is essentially a point-and-click adventure game, a la Secret of Monkey Island, Day of the Tentacle, the Discworld games I was always very fond of. That, you know, it was a huge genre in gaming in the 1980s into the early 1990s, but after about the mid to late 90s, it really collapsed after the FMV revolution gave us quite a few games of dubious quality, and the tastes of the market just kind of changed after that. A bunch of genres sort of disappeared, and adventure gaming was one of them. So you wander around, you pick up items, you click on things, you hear little snippets of dialogue from the main character when you ask for their opinion, essentially, on something, if you touch something or look at something. And you have to sort of theoretically solve puzzles to progress from one area of the game to another. Now, you play as 18-year-old Maxine Caulfield, a very soft-spoken and introverted high school student who goes to a prestigious art school in the small Pacific Northwest town of Arcadia Bay. She's really interested in photography, and you get involved with a lot of events, including supernatural events, that go on in this town. Right from the beginning, there is a missing girl that Max is looking for named Rachel Amber, who is best friends with Chloe Price, the former best friend of Max before Max moved away to the big city. And, you know, she comes back a month before the game starts, and she finds Chloe again, still living in the same town, and they reconnect, and they're totally different people, but they try to find Rachel Amber, this girl, and the mystery that they go on is really interesting. And, you know, it engaged me. I enjoyed it. So I liked the little world that they were walking around, and it was fun, and I enjoyed the visual novel aspect of it, you know, because there's nothing wrong with those kind of games as long as they are a very small niche market and do not invade or colonize any other aspects of gaming. They're an interesting part of gaming. Now, I said that this was a point-and-click adventure game, but that's kinda not true. If you're thinking about traditional point-and-click adventure games from back in the day, they could be absolutely brutally difficult and confusing at times. I mean, like to the point where it seems almost impossible to actually figure out some of this stuff. These games could be insane with what you were supposed to think you were supposed to do, and without a walkthrough, which really didn't exist back then in the late 80s, figuring out how to do this without looking it up on a bulletin board system was just, it was basically impossible, especially for me because I'm bad at puzzles. But Life is Strange is very different from that. It's actually a very story-driven game where you're sort of barely playing it. It hovers on this very unfortunate line of not truly being a game, aside from a couple of occasions here and there where there are some sort of places where you can fail a little bit, or rather be slowed down. You can't really fail in the game. You're pretty much just sort of like a playable story. And that can be a little bit annoying to some people, but, well, I mean, depending on how good the story is, it doesn't really bother me that much. Sometimes it can be horrendously awful, and other times it can be absolutely amazing. There are a lot of things about this game that I really enjoy. I like the setting in the Pacific Northwest. I like the mystery that's going on about people that may be being kidnapped or murdered, or something is going on, and potentially supernatural elements all mixed into this. It's no surprise that my favorite TV show is Twin Peaks, and this actually explicitly references Twin Peaks on a couple of occasions here and there. And they take quite a lot from that. And you sort of go through this character's life more like a visual novel, as I said, than a game. And you just sort of, the gameplay is you living in this town, you existing there. And you commenting on things, talking to people, living in this world. And it's actually kind of fun, because I like this world very much. History is pretty interesting and well-developed, and I like it. However, I have to take a very sharp right turn here in this discussion, because there is a huge amount in this game to absolutely hate. Like, you could just lay a horrible execration on this entire game for a lot of the things that it does. Very, very wrong. And I first came across this game watching it. I did not play it the first time I experienced it. I watched someone else play it. And it was Adam from YourMovieSucks.org. He was playing through it a few years ago, and it was absolutely hilarious. It was one of the funniest things that I had ever seen on YouTube. Him playing this and mocking it relentlessly for all of its bad character design, plot holes, all the horrible nonsense that are going on in this. This game is really like a hyper-hipster game. Even though it kind of pretends not to be, that's really what it is. And it is absolutely unbearable at times with how it expects you to act, how it kind of expects you to feel during certain events. One of the major characters, Max's best friend, is named Chloe. And she is easily the worst character ever in any video game I've ever seen. Like, the worst. And I don't mean the worst drawn or designed, I mean, like, the most morally offensive character I've ever seen. And, she is a noxious, abrasive, borderline abusive control freak that likes having Max, this very soft-spoken, meek, weak person, as her best friend, to push around, to treat badly without any complaint. She is horrible to her mother, unnecessarily awful to her stepfather, and just horrendously unpleasant in every possible way. Unless you are a high school girl that uses Tumblr, then she may be one of the best characters you've ever seen, because of her maddening self-obsession. Like, I've never seen a more narcissistic character in my life. Like, she truly is a neutral evil person. Like, she's evil, but in that she is almost sociopathically selfish at times. She's just a frickin' nightmare to deal with. I mean, my God, is this one of the least pleasant characters I've ever seen.
Holy shit! Jackpot! Cha-ching! Wowzer. That's a lot for the handicapped fund. Dude, there's $5,000 here. I could pay Frank back tonight. Yes, Kate Marsh almost killed herself. Such sad, okay? Why does everybody in my life let me down? My dad gets killed, you bail on me for years, my mother gloms onto stepfucker, now Rachel betrays me.
Everybody betrayed me. I fed up with this world.
A lot of this seemed to be confirmed when the newest game in the series, Life is Strange Before the Storm, came out. And oh my god, even fans of the original game were not fond of this. I mean, some of them were, but a lot more of them were pointing out the obvious flaws. That Chloe is such a loathsome, self-centered character that on multiple occasions she screws with other people and potentially gets other people fired. She vandalizes the bathroom at her school and clearly should have been gotten in trouble for that with the police and be charged with some sort of crime of petty vandalism. And she just relentlessly behaves in a pretty selfish, unpleasant manner. And all of these things, I want to care about these people. It's not necessarily the situations that they're in, but the way in which it's told and the way in which we have to see it, as if these people are aggrieved victims and everything in the world is going against them and oh, poor me. It's like a traditional high school, teenage kind of way to look at the world. It's like it's contrived and designed to be for people like that, and that's really irritating and just very difficult to see as an adult and care about, even though I want to get into this story if it was told in just a little bit of a different way. The game was made by French developers, as I said, and as you might expect, they don't do a necessarily very good job of capturing American life. Add that to the fact that these are middle-aged men writing for teenage girls, the fact that it's in a different country, pile that all together, and you get a lot of really cringeworthy lines that appear in this game, and they are so bad and so funny and so ridiculous that, it's hard to take the game seriously at times.
I just vaped some dank OG bud.
Now, why don't you go fuck your selfie?
Although this junkyard is a dive, I see why Chloe hangs here. She's a steampunk. She's a steampunk.
There is, I think, a very unnecessary, I don't want to say political, but let's just say kind of a social bent to some of the characters in the game. They really knew who they were writing for. Adam from YourMovieSucks.org said when he was doing the playthrough that he really felt like the people making this were intentionally targeting this demographic, that they didn't actually believe any of this stuff, that they were just writing this because they knew that a certain type of teenage girl audience would really like it. Chloe is just sort of necessarily expected to hate her stepfather because he is sort of implied to be conservative. He was in the military. He has a mustache, which is obviously a symbol of evil to her for some reason. And she's just sort of, they make our perspective of him, I think, unnecessarily hostile, and that's kind of unpleasant. In a video game, I think the character that you play really should be a cipher and allow yourself to be projected onto it. Playing a character that's too well-defined and can be really annoying because you're just you're just acting out a role, which is what you do in a play or a movie, but that's not what's happening in a video game. You're supposed to be making the choices for that character, and you really aren't in this one, and that's kind of irritating. There are a few little lines here and there that they toss in, like, these bros got a bro, or something. And it's not overwhelming or anything, and I actually think they stepped it up with later episodes, like episode 3 and 4, where they had more of this stuff than episode 1 and 2. And it was just really kind of irritating to see that. But aside from that, there's a major issue, I think, in general with the game. Like I said, this is a visual novel more than a game. There's really no lose state exactly. You play as Maxine Caulfield, and at this point onward I'm going to be mentioning spoilers, so, be forewarned. I'll put that in the description too. There are going to be spoilers about this. Maxine is sitting one day in class in the first episode, and she discovers shortly thereafter that she has time travel powers, sort of like Riley Rewind, the Anna Canna thing that they did for YouTube years ago. Even do literally the blood coming out of the nose that you see from from Elle in Life is Strange and Anna Canna in Riley Rewind. So, you use your power during conversations to say one thing. You're usually presented with 2 or 3, usually just 2 dialogue options when talking to a character, and you pick either A or B response and see what they say, but then you can rewind time and see what else they would have said if you took the different path. And you can use your magic time rewind powers to get items that you may need or get into places that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. You can effectively use it to kind of teleport in between areas here and there, like open a locked door and set off an alarm and then close it and then rewind time, but you're through the door, but it's before the alarm went off. And I suppose it's okay. I mean, it really doesn't feel very much like a game, There's no fail state in it, and that is kind of irritating. And there really is no choice when you're playing this game. There's none of your effects have real consequences, I think, by the end of the game. And that is really irritating to see. To some degree, there are games that I think are the absolute best games, among the best games I've ever played, like the Silent Hill games, that sort of make you do that. You're playing another person, but the choices that you make during the game are huge. In Silent Hill 2, for instance, my favorite game of the series, you make a number of choices during the game that vastly affect the outcome. And the game never tells you that that's going to happen, as it should be. You should just make the decisions yourself, and then you are shown the consequences of your actions later on. Game promises you. It makes this ardent, very serious statement in every one of the episodes that your choices will have consequences, that what you do will have some sort of effect later on in the world. Life is Strange is a story-based game that features player choice. The consequences of all your in-game actions and decisions will impact the past, present, and future.
Liar!
And if you've learned anything about video games over the past 10 years, you know in your heart of hearts that if the game has to tell you that your choices matter, they definitely never will. It's just like the Telltale games. Your choices really don't mean very much usually. And there are other games where your choices actually matter, that they actually mean something. You can see later what happens based on what you've done. In this game, they always are protesting too much. If they say, oh, your choices matter so much, they mean so much, they don't mean jack shit. They mean nothing. Your choices are worthless. And ultimately at the end of the game, after all of these supposedly important choices, you end up just resetting everything. The entire game is sort of reset to the beginning. Or you commit this ghastly war crime against the town that you're in. You literally have the choice of resetting the game to the beginning of everything as if nothing had ever happened and none of your choices mean anything. Or you destroy the entire town and presumably kill all of the thousands of inhabitants in it. The teen angst level that comes across in the game is so high that it gets a little unbearable at times. You know, Chloe and Max and everybody talk about how much they hate their town and hate their school, but their school is a prestigious and amazing university that you have to pay tuition for. There are these incredible art classes, and it just looks like an extraordinary place to go. You're not somewhere in like the middle of the inner city where there are like metal detectors at the doors and security guards there, and people get shot or killed, or they're drug dealing there. Well, there is drug dealing in Arcadia Bay now that I think about it, but still, there's no gang violence or anything. You're not like the inner city of Chicago or something like that. It just feels like these pretentious rich kid hipster guys, which, I mean, I suppose they deserve their video games as much as anybody, but it just kind of annoys me that that's who they kind of made this for. And I think that it could have been trimmed a little bit and excised, which, however, after experiencing it like that, just recently, a few months ago, when he was doing the playthrough of the recent Life is Strange Before the Storm prequel, I decided to pick up the game. It was cheap on Steam, it was only $5, and I played the free first episode, and I actually got into it. I can't explain it, I'm just that obsessed with Twin Peaks and this sort of high school murder mystery kind of drama that I ended up actually liking it. I don't think that I could ever have paid more than $5 for the game because it's just, like I said, it's more of a visual experience. You know, you just wander around and talk to people and hear Max. And speaking of which, the voice actors are very good. I really, really enjoyed them. I think they all did a very good job. Probably Max was the best, although Ashley Birch as Chloe gets a lot of praise for this, and she is good, but I think Max was probably my favorite. And it's just pleasant to experience that world with that little caveat of like Max sneering at these dude bros that just don't get her, man. That can be kind of annoying and tiresome. Although it only crops up here and there, thank God. As I was watching it, I really felt that the game would have been so much better if it was like a limited series anime or TV show. Like if Life is Strange was like a 7 or 8 episode Netflix series, it would have been perfect. And, you know, we wouldn't have had this sort of painful ridiculousness going on with you can't actually change anything. It's not really a game because there's no fail state. Another thing that I didn't like about it was Max actually becomes very judgmental later on. You know, if like 90% of the game is your main character clicking on things and commenting on them, she ends up being kind of judgmental at the end of that, especially when she goes to this party and she's just going like, ugh, these kids are out here having fun, dancing, ugh. She just seems kind of annoying there, going through all that. I kind of hate it. I kind of hated it, and that was the only time I didn't like her character. And I'm trying to work this out, how I feel about this game. There are so many things that are irritating. There's so many things that are cringeworthy. There are so many things that are ridiculous. But there are so many things that I really like about the world and the setting and some of the characters. And it's that I really feel that when they make a Life is Strange 2, which supposedly they are, and it's not going to feature the same characters, I heard. It's going to be a totally different setting and characters. They are going to, I think, hopefully make something a little bit better, a little bit more polished, a little bit more difficult. But who knows? Maybe they'll just make the same sort of visual novel stuff. Because I hate games that aren't actually games, that are just sort of like they're sort of like audio-visual experiences. It's like a CDI game, if you remember that ancient system from the early 90s. It's not something you really engage with or play so much, or it's just sort of taking a book or a movie or a novel and inserting little interactive sections to it that don't necessarily add a whole lot to the experience. But anyway, I hope in the sequel that they're going to make, Life is Strange 2, that they keep all of the good elements and change things, to tweak them just enough to make it into a more recognizably decent game. Number one, they really have to change things to make it into an actual game here and there. You know, make a fail state more often, make it a little bit more challenging, and make your choices, even if you don't want to do those other things, make the choices that you make actually meaningful and have much bigger differences in the game than ultimately this really horrible ending in the last episode really did not have. I think they should also maybe dial down a little bit on the teen angst going on in this. That would probably be for the best. Maybe hire some people as intermediaries between the French developers and the English translators. I saw an interview with all of the French developers and they all spoke English. So I don't know if they wrote the original script in French and had it translated, or if they actually just wrote it in English themselves, but they really should have some sort of native American English speaker, you know, familiar with teenage American slang, sort of go over drafts of the script and make sure they're getting things right, so Relax Shaka Bra doesn't come up quite as often and make the game sound sort of ridiculous and cringy. And I think that they should stop having the characters make prejudgments for the player about a lot of the things in the world. I think that's really inappropriate and outside of an interactive medium's purview. You know, you should be the one reacting as best as you possibly can, not the character. If you've played the game, please tell me in the comments below what you thought of it, what you thought of my critique. Do you think I'm insane for loving so much about it? Do you think I should be committed to a mental asylum because I hated a bunch of things about it? You know, what's your experience? Is there anyone out there that's conflicted about this game? Is there anybody else out there that loves to laugh at people who are making fun of it, but also loves to get into it? I mean, when I was playing this, I actually thought of Excalibur, the John Boorman movie, and Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which is the story of King Arthur told in two ways. One as a ludicrous comedy where everything is played for laughs and thought of as ridiculous, and one of which takes it utterly seriously, and it's just an action-adventure film.
Listen, strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. I mean, if I went round saying I was an emperor just because some moistened bint had lobbed a scimitar at me, they'd put me away.
In Excalibur and Monty Python, I can take the King Arthur myth in both ways, and in Life is Strange / Life is Cringe, I can take it in both ways too. So please tell me what you think. Please tell me if you've played the game and what, you know, your general thoughts are about it. And please subscribe if you want to see more of my content. I'm going to be uploading more reviews of TV shows and movies and video games. And leave this video a like if you liked it. And thank you very much and have a good day.
What up, Max? How are you?
Here's your flash. Thanks.